Raphael clenched his fists, and for a moment, I feared he might explode.
You stole not only the position that should have been mine, but also the person I love.
It was a lively evening when I walked into the bar with my coworkers. Amber lights glowed off the walls, the music pulsed softly, and laughter echoed around me. This night was a celebration, not just for the team, but especially for me, the company's new manager. I should have felt the thrill of the moment. After all, this promotion was the result of years of hard work. But beneath the smile I was forcing, a shadow of unease was starting to form in my chest. I raised my glass and toasted with my friends. A new era for Lucas begins, I announced, trying to make my voice sound confident. Renato, one of my biggest allies at the office, clinked his glass against mine with enthusiasm. You deserve this, man. Finally reaping the rewards, he said, his voice full of excitement. His words sounded like music to my ears, but deep down, something didn't feel right. Looking around, seeing everyone genuinely happy for me, I felt a sudden jolt of anxiety. What if I wasn't able to live up to their expectations? The night went on, and I tried my best to stay focused on the conversations around me. Carla, another colleague, came up with a joke. Ready for the new challenges? The boss won't cut you any slack. I laughed, but her comment hit me like a hard reminder. Of course, I'm more than ready, I lied, trying to sound confident. But the truth was, the responsibility that came with this promotion was already starting to weigh on me. This feeling was new to me. For years, I had dreamed of moving up the ranks, but now that I was here, the subtle unease had turned into something deeper. I didn't know it yet, but I was at the beginning of a silent battle with my own mind and body. That night, I remembered something I had read about briefly, German New Medicine. The concept of DHS, or Dirk Hammer syndrome, suggests that a sudden, unexpected emotional shock can trigger immediate physical responses. I didn't fully understand this idea, but that night, something in me began to change. The next morning, reality hit me hard. Sitting in the conference room, surrounded by my colleagues' attentive stares and my boss's penetrating gaze, I felt my stomach twist. Lucas, we need immediate results. I expect a complete report by Friday, he said with the same coldness I had come to expect from him. I swallowed hard. Yes, sir, I replied with firmness, though I could feel a wave of discomfort rising inside me. The responsibility, which had once seemed like a glorious achievement, was now a heavy burden on my shoulders. Anxiety and pressure began to consume me, but I still refused to admit to myself that something was wrong. As days passed, my body began sending me signals that something was indeed off. I felt a constant thirst and exhaustion that seemed never-ending. During one particularly stressful afternoon, Mariana, one of the more caring colleagues, approached me and asked, "Lucas, are you okay? You look exhausted." "I'm just tired," I replied quickly, with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. The truth was, something deeper was happening. But at that moment, ignoring the signs felt easier than facing them. Finally, I decided to see a doctor. I assumed it was nothing more than stress, a normal side effect of a big promotion. But deep down, something told me it was more. Sitting in the waiting room, I spent the time trying to convince myself that everything would be fine. When the doctor finally entered with my results, his serious look chilled me. The room, which had once felt safe, now felt oppressive. "Lucas, you've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes," he said bluntly. His words hit me like a punch in the gut. My mind went blank for a few seconds as I tried to process what I had just heard. "It can't be," I murmured. "I'm young, I exercise." But the doctor was firm. "Stress, combined with an unhealthy diet, can trigger this condition. Your body is reacting to what you've been going through." In that moment, reality struck me hard. The promotion, which I had wanted so badly, had now become the catalyst for a health crisis. German New Medicine explains that an emotional conflict, like the fear of not meeting expectations, can have serious biological effects. The pancreas, specifically, is affected in cases of resistance and inner struggle, leading to blood sugar imbalances. If you're enjoying the story so far, give it a like and subscribe to the channel to learn more about how emotions can affect our mind and body. After the diagnosis, my life started down a dark path I couldn't control. That promotion, which should have been a victory, now felt like an invisible prison. I tried to cling to work, immersing myself in tasks and endless reports, believing that the frantic pace would chase away the despair growing inside me. But each passing day only deepened the void. I began to distance myself from everyone. Friends who had once been a source of support now felt distant, almost unreal. Messages from colleagues like Aina, one of my closest friends, began piling up on my phone, unread. "Lucas, are you okay? Haven't heard from you in weeks. I'm worried." I read her message but couldn't bring myself to respond. It felt like any reply would be an admission that something inside me had broken, and I wasn't ready to confront that. Instead, I dove into work. Each task became a form of escape, but also a growing source of exhaustion. The constant thirst, relentless fatigue, and lack of energy had become my daily companions. My diet, which was already far from ideal, only got worse. Quick snacks, processed food, excessive coffee, anything that would keep me awake and focused on the endless demands of the office. One night, while reviewing the numbers for an important project, I felt the world start to spin around me. My vision blurred and a loud ringing filled my ears. Exhaustion had finally won. I tried to stand up, but my legs gave out and everything went black. The company security guards found me the next morning, passed out at my desk, surrounded by scattered papers. It was as if the scene symbolized the chaos my life had become. When I woke up, I was lying in a hospital bed with the cold, impersonal light blinking above me. The constant sound of machines monitoring my vitals echoed in the silence, reminding me that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep ignoring the signs my body was sending. A doctor came into the room, his expression serious. "Lucas, you've had a breakdown from accumulated stress and lack of self-care. Your diabetes is out of control, and this can't go on." Still groggy and weak, I tried to justify myself. "I think I overdid it at work. I was in the middle of an important project." The words came out hesitant, empty, as if I didn't even believe them myself. The doctor, however, was direct. "Lucas, this isn't just exhaustion. You're ignoring the signals your body is giving you. If you keep this up, the consequences will be serious. You need a drastic change in lifestyle." I remained silent, absorbing the gravity of the situation. He was right. I was in a spiral of self-destruction, trying to prove something to myself and the world, not realizing that I was sacrificing what mattered most, my health. I was kept under observation at the hospital for a few hours, and with every passing minute, the weight of all I had been ignoring became more evident. But even as I understood what was happening, I still felt trapped. Trapped in the cycle of work, the fear of failure, and the desire to meet others' expectations. In the midst of these tangled thoughts, I heard a soft knock on the door. I looked up, and there was Aina standing in the doorway, her expression both worried and determined. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to hide, ashamed of being so vulnerable in front of her. "Lucas, what's going on with you?" she asked, getting straight to the point as she walked into the room and approached my bed. Her voice was gentle, but her tone showed she wasn't there for a light conversation. "I just overdid it at work, I think," I replied, looking away, trying to hide the obvious truth. Aina sat down beside me, folding her arms in a protective stance, but her eyes were fixed on mine. "Overdid it? Lucas, you passed out at work. This isn't just stress. And you've been distancing yourself from everyone. Me, your friends. What's really going on?" I sighed, feeling a lump form in my throat. I didn't want to be a burden on anyone. Everyone has their own worries. I thought I could handle this on my own. Aina shook her head, disappointed but understanding. "Lucas, asking for help isn't being a burden. You've always been strong, but no one can handle everything alone. What are you trying to prove?" Her words hit a nerve. I wasn't just trying to prove something to others, but to myself as well. However, I now realized that this need had led me down a dangerous path. I thought I could manage it all. I just wanted to do everything right. But now it feels like I've lost control. Aina stayed silent for a few moments, taking in my words. When she finally spoke, Her voice was firm but full of compassion. "You need to change, Lucas. Not just for yourself, but for everyone who cares about you. I care about you." The impact of her words was immediate. I knew she was right. From that moment on, I realized that, although the path ahead would be difficult, I needed to start making different choices. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't facing this alone. After that conversation in the hospital, something began to shift inside me. For the first time, I admitted I couldn't handle everything alone. And Aina's intervention became the turning point I desperately needed. She not only brought clarity to what I was dealing with, but also became an essential source of practical and emotional support. The next day, still recovering from the shock of everything that had happened, the intercom rang. It was Aina, and as I expected, she didn't wait for an invitation. When I opened the door, there she was, standing with a determined look and a bag full of healthy food. "Hey Lucas, I'm here to help," she said straightforwardly, walking in before I could come up with an excuse. I tried to argue, making a last-ditch attempt to maintain some control. "Aina, I'm fine. Really, you don't have to do this," she sighed, placing the bag on the kitchen counter. "Lucas, you're not fine, and we both know it. You can't keep going like this. If nothing changes, things will only get worse. So let's get started. I'm here to help you take the first steps, but you have to be willing." Her tone was firm but kind. Aina knew that, no matter how much I wanted to hide, something inside me was already tired of resisting. Somehow, she always knew how to break down my walls. I leaned against the counter, watching her as she organized the groceries she'd brought. Whole grains, fresh vegetables, fruits. It all looked like it belonged to a different life than the one I'd been living these last few months. "So, where do we start?" I asked, trying to sound interested, though I could still feel that inner skepticism. "We start with the basics," she said, picking up a few vegetables. "You're going to learn how to prepare simple, healthy meals. And no, this isn't just about food. It's about cleansing your mind and body. The idea is to help you regain control, step by step." While she explained, I remained silent, absorbing her words. It wasn't just about what I was eating. It was about how I was handling my life. Aina wasn't just helping me with my diet. She was teaching me to slow down and prioritize what really mattered. As she chopped vegetables and showed me how to prepare a nutritious meal, I felt like we were having a deeper conversation without needing many words. It was as if, by preparing that food together, we were rebuilding something inside me, something that had been pushed aside amidst all the chaos and hustle. In the middle of our meal prep, Aina stopped and looked me in the eyes, as if she had been waiting for the right moment to share something she had been holding back. "Lucas, I've also done some reading on German New Medicine. Remember when I mentioned it to you before? It has an interesting approach on how emotional traumas can affect the body." I furrowed my brow. "Yeah, you mentioned it, but what does that have to do with me?" "Everything," she said, without hesitation. German New Medicine suggests that many health issues originate from unresolved emotional conflicts. In your case, the stress and pressure at work might have created a conflict of resistance within you, affecting your pancreas and ultimately triggering diabetes. I looked at her for a moment, trying to process it all. The idea was intriguing, yet hard to accept right away. "You think my body is responding to stress? Biologically? Like diabetes is a response to what I'm feeling?" Aina nodded. "Yes, exactly. And the best part is, if we can understand this conflict and resolve what's behind it, your body may start to heal. Of course, you still need to make practical changes, as we've already begun. But it's also important to look at what's consuming you emotionally." I felt a mix of skepticism and hope. It was a perspective I'd never considered before, but somehow it made sense. My body was reacting, and if there was a chance to reverse this by addressing internal conflicts, maybe I could, in fact, regain control of my life. In the days that followed, Aina stayed by my side. She not only helped me make better choices for my health, but also encouraged me to take small steps toward a more balanced life. Together, we started implementing changes. I began taking short breaks at work to walk, eating more consciously, and setting aside time to relax, something that once felt like a luxury. But despite the improvements, there was one factor I couldn't ignore: the work environment. Even with the changes I was implementing in my personal life, the pressure in the office persisted. And along with that pressure came Raphael. Raphael had always been one of the most ambitious professionals in the company, and his rivalry with me had been building up for some time. Ever since my promotion, it seemed like he was determined to destabilize me. I knew he believed he deserved the position I had earned, and to him, every one of my mistakes was an opportunity to prove I wasn't fit for the role. But there was more to the tension between us, something that went beyond the professional sphere. Raphael and Aina had a history. They had dated for a while, and although Aina didn't talk much about the relationship, it was clear Raphael still had feelings for her. And now, with Aina growing closer to me, his resentment was only intensifying. I could feel his eyes on me during meetings, always ready to criticize any small slip-up. He wasn't subtle about his provocations, either. One afternoon, during an important meeting, Raphael made a malicious comment. "Lucas, do you really think you're ready to lead this project? With so much going on in your personal life, maybe now isn't the best time." The remark caught me off guard. The room went silent for a few seconds, and I felt my face heat up. I looked over at Aina, who was also in the meeting, and saw that she had noticed the implication too. I kept my cool and responded firmly, "I'm fully focused on the job, Raphael. If you have any suggestions for the project, I'm open to hearing them. Otherwise, let's continue." Raphael gave a sarcastic smile, clearly pleased to have gotten under my skin. Sure. I just want to make sure everything is under control," he said, his voice laced with irony. After the meeting, Aina came over to me, visibly irritated. He crossed the line. "You can't let this keep happening, Lucas. Raphael is taking advantage of a personal situation to attack you." I sighed, knowing she was right. He's trying to throw me off, but I won't give him the satisfaction. Aina looked at me for a moment, her eyes reflecting concern. I knew the conflict with Raphael was far from over. Aina hesitated for a moment before finally addressing the issue that I knew had been lingering. "Lucas, there's something I need to tell you. Raphael and we dated until not too long ago." I pretended to be surprised, though I had already heard rumors. "I know, Aina. You don't have to worry about it. I didn't want this situation to complicate things for you," she continued, looking down at the floor. "We broke up because he couldn't handle the fact that I wanted to follow my own path. He always had this need for control, and now it seems he's bringing that into the workplace. What he's doing to you, it's more about me than your competence." I nodded, understanding the weight of her words. Raphael didn't just see me as a professional rival. He saw me as someone who was taking a place he still considered his, even though his relationship with Aina had ended. "Aina, none of this is your fault. He needs to deal with his own issues." The following days were marked by an increasing tension in the work environment. Despite the positive changes in my personal life, the atmosphere at the company remained heavy. Raphael didn't let up on his provocations, and I could feel his presence threatening my stability more and more. Even though I was slowly building my resilience, there were moments when he managed to stir up old insecurities in me. But something deeper also started to emerge: the realization that work, the promotion, and the pursuit of success weren't the only problems I needed to face. It was during a visit to my father that I realized just how much my relationship with work was rooted in something much older. He had been sick for a while, and his frail health made me reflect on how I was repeating a cycle that perhaps was transgenerational. Sitting beside him in a heavy silence, I thought about how my father had always put work first, neglecting his health and family. "Dad, I feel like I'm losing everything," I murmured, my voice carrying a vulnerability I rarely showed. "Is it worth it? Working so much, sacrificing?" I always thought that's how things worked, but now it feels like I'm losing control of everything, just like you did. My father looked at me, his weary face reflecting a lifetime of sacrifices. He sighed, and for a moment, I could see the pain in his eyes. "Lucas, I made many mistakes," he said, his voice weak. "I worked so much, but in the end, life isn't just about that. You need to take care of what really matters before it's too late." His words resonated deeply within me. For the first time, I began to see the pattern I was following. The cycle of neglecting health and relationships in the name of professional success. It was clear that I needed to break free from this emotional legacy. That visit made me realize that what I was facing went beyond the conflict with Raphael or the pressure of my position. It was something deeper, the fear of not being enough, the drive to prove my worth at any cost, and the weight of expectations passed down from previous generations. But now I wanted and needed to build a new path, one that didn't sacrifice my health or relationships. I returned to work with a fresh perspective. The changes Aina had encouraged me to make were beginning to take effect. Although the stress was still there, I was learning to handle it better. The wellness project that Aina and I had been developing at the company started gaining traction. And surprisingly, many colleagues began to get involved. It felt like as I took better care of myself, my ability to lead was also growing stronger. Aina and I worked closely on every detail of the program, and our partnership grew more solid with each passing day. She was always by my side, offering support and creative ideas. We spent hours in the office organizing presentations and fine-tuning the project's communication materials. One afternoon, while we were deeply focused on one of the final reviews for an important presentation, something unexpected happened. "Let me show you an idea," Aina said, moving closer with her laptop. She leaned in to adjust something on the screen, and at that moment, our hands brushed briefly. It was a simple, almost casual touch, but it sent a chill up my spine. Our eyes met, and for an instant, the world seemed to stop. There was something different in that touch, something beyond the friendship we had built over the years. It was as if in that moment, all the support, closeness, and unspoken feelings between us came to the surface. Aina smiled shyly and quickly looked away. "Well, back to work," she tried to say, but it was obvious that something had changed between us. In the days that followed, these subtle moments continued to happen. Lingering glances, occasional touches, smiles that carried more meaning than words. I knew I was beginning to see Aina in a different light, and from the way she reacted, I could tell she was noticing this shift too. It didn't take long for this connection to become harder to ignore. One night, as we were finishing the preparations for the official launch of the wellness program, we found ourselves alone in the office again. The room was quiet, except for the distant sound of keyboards and the gentle hum of the air conditioning. Our conversation flowed naturally, but there was a subtle tension in the air, something that made each interaction feel more meaningful. When we finally finished and got up to leave, we looked at each other in a moment that felt like an eternity. The silence was comfortable but loaded with something unspoken. Without thinking, I leaned in, and before I could hesitate, we kissed. It was a gentle kiss, filled with emotion and vulnerability, as if we had both been waiting for this moment for a long time. When we pulled back, she smiled shyly, and for a brief moment, we stayed in silence, absorbing what had just happened. "I didn't expect this to happen, but—" I began to say, but she interrupted me with a warm smile. "Neither did I, Lucas, but maybe it was inevitable." That kiss sealed something between us, something that went beyond the professional. It was the beginning of a new chapter for both of us, and somehow, I felt that this also was part of my healing process. As my relationship with Aina deepened and the wellness project gained momentum, the tension with Raphael didn't disappear. In fact, it only grew stronger. Raphael was not someone who easily accepted being left behind. And with the rising success of the program, a project I was leading that was gaining positive attention from everyone, including the board, he began to act even more hostile. During an important meeting where we were presenting preliminary results of the wellness program, Raphael took the opportunity to launch another attack, trying to destabilize me in front of everyone. "Lucas, with all due respect, do you really think you're qualified to lead this program? Given your health history, perhaps you're not the best example of someone who can promote wellness within the company," he said with a smirk, prompting murmurs in the room. That comment was a low blow, and I knew he was targeting my biggest vulnerability. I felt my stomach twist, and for a moment, I almost gave in to anger. But before I could respond, Aina intervened firmly and decisively. Raphael, your comment is not only disrespectful but also completely out of context. Lucas has faced his own health challenges, yes, but that only makes him more qualified to lead this project. He understands what's at stake better than any of us. The room went silent. Aina's support was unexpected but incredibly reassuring. Raphael, clearly caught off guard by her public defense, seemed to lose his grip on the situation. He opened his mouth to try to justify himself, but quickly realized he had lost the support of the team. After the meeting, Aina and I exchanged a knowing look. Somehow, that episode had further solidified our partnership, both at work and beyond. But we also knew Raphael wouldn't give up so easily. The shadow of his resentment still lingered over us, and it was something we needed to handle carefully. After the clash with Raphael and Aina's public defense of me, I felt a deep need to reconnect with my family. I organized a dinner, and for the first time in months, everyone gathered at my place. While we prepared the meal, conversations flowed naturally. We laughed about old stories and shared moments that I felt I had lost. During dinner, my father, who had always been more reserved, looked at me and said, "Lucas, I'm proud of how you're handling everything. You're changing." Those words resonated deeply. I realized that by finding balance in my professional and personal life, I was also inspiring those around me. Reconnecting with my family renewed my strength to face the challenges at work. By the end of the night, I felt a renewed connection with them and an inner peace that I hadn't experienced in a long time. After weeks of changes in my routine, Aina finally scheduled a session with a German new medicine therapist, as she had mentioned earlier. It was something that made me curious, but also a bit skeptical. On the appointed afternoon, Aina arrived to pick me up. When I got in the car, she gave me an encouraging smile. "Ready for this new step?" she asked, enthusiastically. "Ready, I think," I replied, trying to mask my anxiety. During the drive, we chatted about how the wellness project was progressing, but part of me was focused on what was coming next. When we arrived at the office, the therapist, named Fabio, greeted us with a warm smile. "Hello, Lucas. Hello, Aina. I'm glad you decided to take this step," Fabio said, guiding us to a cozy room with a peaceful energy that helped calm my nerves. After a few initial questions about my health and background, Fabio began to explain. "Lucas, what I'm going to share with you may sound different from what you're used to hearing. Dr. Reich Gerd Hammer, who developed German New Medicine, or Germanisch Heilkunde, made a fascinating discovery. He found that each disease originates from a deep emotional shock, which we call Dirk Hammer syndrome, or DHS. I nodded, intrigued, and Aina gave me an encouraging look. Fabio continued, "In the specific case of type 2 diabetes, Dr. Hammer observed that it's often related to a resistance conflict. When we resist something in our lives, whether external pressure, like in your case with work and promotion, or internal, the body responds by raising blood sugar levels to give us the energy we need to resist. In this case, sugar isn't the villain, it's a biological response. So, my condition is a response to stress?" I asked, beginning to see connections that hadn't made sense before. "Exactly," Fabio replied. "Your body is responding to a conflict you haven't resolved yet. The most important thing, Lucas, is that you're not condemned to live with this forever. If you can resolve the biological conflict, your body can return to balance, and your blood sugar levels can stabilize. The cure is directly connected to resolving this conflict." Aina, who was sitting beside me, smiled, visibly relieved by Fabio's words. I, on the other hand, felt as if a light had been switched on inside me. The idea that there was a chance for healing, to actually overcome this without being dependent on medication for the rest of my life, was something I had never thought possible. So, it's not just about managing the symptoms, but about resolving what's causing all of this? I asked, still trying to absorb what I had just heard. Exactly, Lucas. It's not just about treating the symptoms. It's about understanding what your body is trying to communicate and addressing it on a deeper level, Fabio explained. At the end of the session, Fabio guided us on taking the first steps toward emotional healing, suggesting some techniques and approaches to work on the conflict. We left the office with renewed hope. When Aina dropped me off at home, still in the car, there was a comfortable silence between us. The session had given us a new perspective, and it felt like we were ready to face whatever came next together. Before I got out, she turned to me and said, "I knew there was something deeper behind all of this. I'm happy you're willing to open up to it, Lucas." I looked at her grateful. "I wouldn't have made it without you. Thank you for always being there for me." We hugged, a long, comforting embrace, and when we pulled back, our faces were close. For a moment, we were silent, our eyes locked on each other. Then, without thinking, we leaned and kissed. It was a soft kiss, but filled with emotion, as if all the feelings we had built up were finally finding their way. When we pulled away, we both smiled shyly, sensing that something new and beautiful was beginning right there. The day of the official wellness program presentation arrived. The company auditorium was packed, with the attentive eyes of directors and employees waiting for what would be the big moment for my project. For me, that presentation represented more than the launch of a program. It was the culmination of a personal journey of recovery and self-discovery. Aina was by my side, and together we had poured weeks of dedication into this initiative. However, even in the midst of the general excitement, I knew there was an obstacle. Raphael, with his ambition and resentment, wouldn't sit idly by. The fact that he was seated next to the company director, whispering something in his ear before the presentation, made me uneasy. The tension between us had reached an unbearable level, and I knew he was plotting something to try to sabotage the project. As I began speaking, I felt the weight of every gaze in the room. Anxiety threatened to take over, but I took a deep breath and focused on Aina's words, which always reminded me that I was ready for this moment. I presented the preliminary results of the project, showing how employees were engaged, the benefits already observed, and the future potential. But then, just as I was about to conclude, Raphael stood up and requested to speak. "With all due respect, Lucas, I understand that your wellness program has good intentions. However, I think we need to be realistic. This kind of initiative consumes valuable resources and doesn't yield concrete results in the short term. We can't afford to invest in something that might not provide a return. We need more stable leadership for projects like this." His words fell like a bomb in the auditorium. All eyes turned to me, and for a brief moment, I felt exposed. Raphael had managed to shift the focus to uncertainties, casting doubt on my ability to lead. I knew in that instant that he was trying to make the board skeptical of my project, undermining my credibility. But before I could respond, something unexpected happened. Several of my colleagues began to speak up. Mariana, one of the employees who had benefited the most from the program, stood up and said, "Lucas's wellness program has helped me handle work stress in a way I never could before. It's made all the difference for me, and I'm sure it has for many others here as well." Other employees began to chime in, sharing stories about how the initiative had positively impacted their lives. The director, who had initially seemed inclined to consider Raphael's doubts, started to look at the data and testimonials more seriously. He realized there was something real here, something that couldn't be ignored. Aina, standing beside me, gave me an encouraging look. I took a deep breath and decided to confront Raphael directly. "Raphael, I understand your concerns. However, the data speaks for itself, and more importantly, people here are witnessing the positive impact of this program. Wellness is not just a cost. It's an investment in the company's future, and I believe investing in people is the best way to ensure long-term success." The room fell silent for a moment, and I knew everyone was waiting for the director's reaction. He stood up and, with an approving expression, said, "Lucas, your presentation was convincing, and the results are clear. I'm impressed with the impact your project has already made, and I want to see it expand. Let's continue with the program and allocate more resources to it. Congratulations." I felt a wave of relief and emotion wash over me. This victory wasn't just about the project. It was about me. That moment represented the end of an internal struggle that had lasted for months. Raphael, realizing he had lost, remained silent, though his eyes reflected a mixture of defeat and resentment. But I knew he wouldn't give up so easily. There was an unresolved tension, a resentment he harbored not just about the job, but about Aina as well. At the end of the event, Raphael, who had watched the presentation in silence, felt the weight of defeat on his shoulders. The director's words made it clear that Lucas had triumphed, and this left him even more unsettled. Raphael knew he needed to face Lucas and finally apologize. Over the past few weeks, something inside him had shifted, and he recognized that his hostility was more a product of his own fears and resentments than any actual flaw of Lucas. After gathering his courage, Raphael decided to look for Lucas to apologize. He walked through the company's hallways, now almost empty after the event. In a quieter corner, near a less traveled area, he heard voices and soft footsteps. As he approached, his heart froze at what he saw. Aina and Lucas were standing close together, leaning against a wall, locked in a passionate kiss. The shock hit Raphael like a punch. The world seemed to stop for a few seconds. The betrayal he felt wasn't just about the position Lucas had gained, but the fact that, even unknowingly, he still harbored feelings for Aina. And seeing her now, sharing such an intimate moment with Lucas, tore at his heart in a way he hadn't expected. Raphael's eyes filled with a mixture of anger and pain. He knew that his relationship with Aina had ended long ago, but that kiss, at that moment, felt like it stole something he still believed was his. The sense of emotional betrayal reverberated in his chest, reigniting the resentment he had been trying to control. Silently, he took a few steps back, unnoticed. The image of that moment between Aina and Lucas would be forever etched in his mind. A new wound was created right then and there. Now Raphael felt a growing anger toward the couple, something he couldn't digest. The end of the event, which symbolized the closure of Lucas's conflict, marked for him the beginning of a new torment. The image of that kiss burned in his mind, fueling a resentment he hadn't realized existed. As he left the company in silence, Raphael couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal and loss. What had started as a professional rivalry was transforming into something much darker, and he had no idea that this suppressed anger would bring terrible consequences in the near future. With the wellness project's success firmly established, my relationship with Aina also began to blossom. What had once felt like a simple friendship was now evolving into something much deeper. The kiss we had shared was only the beginning of a new chapter in our lives, but Raphael, who still harbored feelings for Aina, couldn't stand what he saw developing between us. His anger and resentment grew silently, in a dangerous way. Days after the presentation, while Aina and I were talking in a private office, I noticed a shadow approaching through the slightly open door. It was Raphael, who had come to see me with an unreadable expression. "Lucas, can we talk?" he said, his voice tense. I sensed that something was wrong. Aina, sensing the tension, suggested I speak to him alone and left, giving me a supportive look. As soon as she left, Raphael closed the door and turned to me, his eyes burning with resentment. "I saw you too," he said with a chilling calm. "I know you and Aina are together." I swallowed hard, realizing he was on the brink of a personal confrontation. "Raphael, I don't owe you any explanations about my personal life. Whatever happened between you and Aina is in the past. Aina and I are together now, and that's our choice." Raphael clenched his fists, and for a moment, I feared he might explode. "You stole not only the position that should have been mine, but also the person I love." He took a step forward, and I saw the fury boiling in his eyes. "Everything you're feeling, Raphael, is something you need to resolve," I said, trying to stay calm. "But I'm not going to apologize for being with Aina or for earning this position. You need to move on." For a brief moment, I thought Raphael might lash out, but he simply took a step back and left the room, slamming the door. The tension between us had reached a critical point, but at the same time, it was clear that he needed to deal with his own emotional conflicts. The battle between us, both professionally and personally, was coming to an end, though his resentment would leave scars. A few weeks later, Aina scheduled an appointment with a German new medicine therapist, as we had planned. Fabio, the therapist, welcomed us with a calm and understanding approach. He explained that many of the conflicts we carry in our lives are more than surface stress. They are deep traumas that, if unresolved, manifest in the body. As we discussed my diabetes diagnosis, Fabio helped me understand how my fear of failure and the pressure I imposed on myself had contributed to the imbalance in my body. Healing comes from understanding these conflicts and resolving them, he said. I left that session with a clarity I had never had before. My journey to recovery was far from just physical. It was emotional, mental, and above all, a journey of self-discovery. With Aina by my side, I knew I was on the right path. What had started as a promotion had become the beginning of a much greater transformation. I had not only learned to take care of my body, but also to value my mental and emotional health. And above all, I had learned that asking for help, whether at work or in personal life, was not a sign of weakness but of strength. With this lesson, I felt ready for whatever came next. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and comment if you guessed what would happen in the end. If you want to learn more about the emotional impact that events and traumas can have on the body, subscribe to the channel. And if you know someone with type 2 diabetes, share this video with them. Understanding the meaning behind symptoms and diseases through real diagnoses may help them in their healing process. With every video, a touching and impactful story awaits. See you next time.